Good morning. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Southampton Town Board to order on this 12th day of November, 2020. Please rise if you're able and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll? Actually, read the special meeting notice and then call the roll.
Yes, I'd be happy to. Members of the Town Board, special Town Board meeting Thursday, November 12th, 2020 at 10 a.m. Please be advised that pursuant to Section 62 of Town Law, a special Town Board meeting will be held in the Town Board Meeting Room, Southampton Town Hall, 116 Hampton Road, Southampton, New York, on Thursday, November 12th, 2020 at 10 a.m. for the purpose of considering the following. Amend 2021 preliminary capital budget to add HBWD capital project carbon exchange plant number 1. Amend 2021 preliminary capital budget for estimated roll forward amounts. Authorize increases in the maximum amount to be expended annually in the Town of Southampton special districts. Adopt the 2021 to 2025 capital program and 2021 capital budget. Adopt the 2021 final operating budget. Jay Schneiderman, Supervisor, Town of Southampton, dated November 6, 2020. Supervisor Schneiderman.
Present.
Councilwoman Lofstad.
Here.
Councilman Martell.
Present.
Councilman Bouvier.
Here.
Councilman Scavone.
Present.
All right, thank you. All right, so we can begin. We'll start with public portion. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to close public portion.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Bouvier. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and we'll go to resolutions. Our Controller, Len Marchese, is here. Should anybody have any questions? We're going to start with the Resolution 952 being offered by Councilman Lofstad and Martell. So, Julie?
Town Board Resolution 2020-952, co-sponsored with Councilman Martell. Amend 2021 preliminary capital budget to add Hampton Bays Water District capital project carbon exchange plant number 1.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Martell. So, on the motion, this is to change the carbon filtration media in the granular activated carbon filters at Field 1 in the Hampton Bays Water District, which are removing the PFAS, PFOA chemicals from the drinking water, but at time to time needs to get changed, and it's time.
Yeah.
A little sooner than perhaps we thought, but if we don't do this, we run the risk of some of that starting to spill out from the carbon.
And the filter is new in that particular area, so we're finding out the timing that is going to be required for that, for replacement of that. And it's winterized right now.
It is not winterized. Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's not in use at the moment.
Right.
Right, yeah, we haven't built a building around it to make it a
Right.
year-round use, but yeah, it's a seasonally used facility. But yeah, so we can do the work without affecting
Right.
water flow. That's true.
Well, I think to the councilman's point as well, is that we're talking about maintenance, and, you know, this was unexpected. We had the meeting with the, as
Yeah.
commissioners with the Water District, and that timing wasn't indicated to us. So I think we can hopefully derive some kind of maintenance schedule out here so we understand the cost going forward. You know, so we don't have to do this, we can
Right.
budget that through.
Yeah, that's why this wasn't in the capital budget that I submitted, and we're adding it, but there's no impact to the actual budget from this, in that the debt service for this really doesn't kick in till the following year. So it doesn't affect 2021, in terms, we don't have to collect more taxes to cover this project.
Only, I meant only in terms of, we had an expectation of when these changes would take place, and obviously they've exceeded that, so as we plan going into the future, we need to have that schedule
Right.
so that we can plan those additional costs.
Yeah, and we do have that 10-year capital plan that DeVerco and Bartolucci put together.
Right.
And I don't even know if this
that's
was
in it.
in the plan at all, the changing of the carbon.
It-
It may not have been. If it was, it probably wasn't in next year. Probably was a couple of years out. We could take a look at
I
that.
know it was a consideration when the filter was installed.
Right.
It's probably going to be determined on gallon usage
Yeah.
and possible contamination.
So we could interpolate from
Right.
that.
The other thing, I just remind the board that we have an active claim against the manufacturers of these chemicals, where we're seeking to be reimbursed for all the expenses we've had related to the groundwater contamination. So this will be added to that list of expenses. The cost of replacing this media, all the testing that we have to do because of it, and the installation of the filters, the connections to public water that we may do in that area, as well as what we've done in East Quogue. The cost of this pollution is getting very high, and it's really not fair for our taxpayers to have to pay for this. They did not create this problem. This was something that was thrust upon them by the companies that produced this, and, the lawsuit alleges that they knew of this possibility, and so we're trying to get that money back. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so we had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. All right, next one is 953 of 2020. It amends the 2021 preliminary capital budget and estimated roll forward amounts.
Second?
Seconded by Councilwoman Lofstad. This is there's more housekeeping, right, Len?
Yeah,
Come up to the microphone. Before Charles Styler from CTV runs out and says we can't hear you.
when we did your preliminary budget, there were certain amounts that we put in the projections. Now those amounts are updated, and this just updates them for the last 3 months of spending.
Okay, can you stay there?
Sure.
All right, any questions? All right, we have a motion and a second?
Rolling forward, it'll go into the next fiscal year. In other words,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have to quantify them,
It's a moving target.
They're
Every time you
encumbered,
pay bills,
quantified.
the numbers change.
and we move them forward.
Yeah, it just gives me the authority to make those changes.
Okay.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. All right, Resolution 954 of 2020 authorizes increases in the maximum amount to be expended annually in the town of Southampton Special District. We held 2 hearings on this. This is all the lighting districts, park districts, road improvement districts, et cetera, the water district, ambulance districts. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Councilman Scavone. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. 955 of 2020 amends the 2021 preliminary budget for updates to Parks Department proposed fee schedule.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Bouvier. So here's what's happening in this. The showmobile fee is just, it's $100. We're just changing, it's really no change from mixing to sound, it says. So I guess it's clearer what we're charging for if we're providing sound. Conscience Point, the slip rental is gonna go from $130 a foot to $140 per foot. That's still very competitive. There's a neighboring marina that is, I think, $175, I think, per foot is the starting rate there. And then the East Quogue Marina, it goes, proposed increase is a $10 increase, so it would go from $100 per foot to $110 per foot for 25 or less feet. And I guess there's no electric hook up there, that's getting knocked out there. All right, Pine Neck Marina is going to $110 per foot. That's also a $10 increase per foot. Beaver Dam Creek Marina, also a $10 per foot. These don't have the same amenities that Conscience Point have, that's why, and the market is different in those areas, but it's 110. So 100 to 110, and then concession rates Good Ground Park food truck, instead of 500 per event, 100 per event, and Good Ground Park, 500 per event.
Can you explain that one? I was just
That one's-
confused.
Yeah, it seemed like a seasonal.
Yeah, I think it was 500 for the season, and now they're doing 100 per event.
Per event.
And swapping on the other ice
Right,
cream.
yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
got it.
Oh, and Good Ground is 500 for the season.
Season,
Yeah.
okay. Got it, thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
It's, yeah, overall, it's a kind of a trade-off.
Got it.
Okay, so those are the only changes in Parks Department fees. Do we have a second? We did have a second, right?
I second it.
Seconded by Councilman Bouvier, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. 956 of 2020 amends the 2021 preliminary budget for updates to code enforcement fee schedule for 2021. Let's get a second, we can talk about it.
Second?
Seconded by Councilman Lofsted. So the standard fee for, is this for a housing permit?
For rental, yeah.
A rental permit goes from 200 to 300. It's a $100 increase. Okay, income that's significant increase.
It's over 2 years.
It's a 2-year? Okay, that's not too bad then. Well, the renewable every 2 years, so 150 a year then. Income qualified tenant fee waived, so enhanced star veterans exemption, so the fee would be 150, so it'll still stay at 50%. Half the normal price. Volunteer fire department, or ambulance workers, real property exemption, goes up by $50, so that stays at 50%. Inspection certification by licensed architect or licensed engineer is an increase of $50 to $200. Senior citizen or disabled, qualified disabled person, that fee is lowered to by $50, but it goes from 100 to 150. And then property in violation of chapter, the fee is 500, so there's no change there. And expedited permit application is no change there either.
No, we
Oh,
didn't.
no.
That's a new fee.
Yeah.
Wait, this,
We never had an expedited.
oh, I see, okay, so it's never been an expedited permit, so that will be 750, so the increase is 750, because it was 0.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, got it. All right. Any questions on that? All right, we had a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. Okay, 957 of 2020 adopts the 2021 and 2025 capital program and the 2021 capital budget.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Martell. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved. Okay, and now the big one, the operating budget, final operating budget, 958 of 2020. This adopts the 2021 final operating budget. Let's get a second.
Second.
Second by Councilman Bouvier on the motion. I just want to take this opportunity to thank the board, thank all of the department heads, thank Comptroller Marchese and all of his staff, especially Dorothy, for all their work in compiling this document. It's a lot of work, and they really did their best to balance all of the factors. This was a different year than most. We lost the revenue in a lot of unusual places. We got hit with increasing costs in a number of areas, including pension funds, funding of pensions, and we lost revenue in different places, justice court, et cetera, building permit fees. But they managed to work out a budget that was, kept the level of services the same, with a very nominal increase in the tax rate, which, as I said before, is about $12 a year for a house valued at $500,000, to provide all the town services. And there's a lot of town services, from our amazing parks to our police to our highway.
Well, that's an area we still need to address at some point, is the police. You can talk about that. The county police aid.
Yeah, so, one of what Len is pointing out really is after we compiled this budget, we, and I don't even know if it's still finalized, whether the county has
Now,
adopted.
Steve Ballmer was on the radio this morning, still saying that he's going to make those
Restoration.
restorations. Yeah,
Right.
he was on, I was listening,
Have they adopted their budget at the county?
not yet.
Right, so if the county's budget still isn't adopted, the legislature has been trying to restore the money that was cut. There was $1.5 million cut from the town of Southampton in county funding of our police. It is not reflected in this budget. The county executive has assured me that, the money will be restored. It sounds like there's going to be a large federal aid package that comes out of the new administration, and, if it gets through Congress and the Senate, it will have aid to municipalities. There should be money for Southampton Town, so it won't just be going to the county. The program that Congressman Zeldin and others have been advocating for includes money for the town of Southampton, as well as the county. So, we should be made whole and maybe even recover some of our COVID expenses that we've incurred over the past year, which will take pressure off this budget.
How does the county fiscal year line up with the town's fiscal year?
It's the same fiscal year, but their budget adoption is later,
Right.
right? It's a little bit later?
Well, this year, the county executive chose to make it later. Sometimes they've adopted it right the day after election. So this year, he chose to kind of delay it for their own issues. I don't.
Yeah.
Well, and there was a proposition that affected that as well.
Yeah, I think they're still waiting for that to be, that's still, the ballots are still being counted on that.
We submitted the town's budget before the county executive submitted the county's budget. So I don't know, maybe.
The timing is supposed to be about the same.
About the
It's
same.
really, because we have to collect county taxes. The towns are responsible for collecting the taxes. So, we kind of accumulate everything from everybody, and then it goes on our tax bill. So, they have to give us their levy pretty quickly, otherwise I won't know how much to raise to collect for them.
Right.
So, yeah, it has to be adopted before Thanksgiving. So I'm not sure when they're planning on doing it.
Any other questions?
No, just that the proposition is going to mean some money for the county if it does pass, and currently it is, well, it's leading, I don't know how to say it, the proposition right now has enough votes to pass, but they're still counting absentee ballots here.
No.
Actually, they haven't started counting absentee ballots in New York, or they've just started, one or the other. I know it's
Week after.
it's a week after the election, so we won't know about that, but that's the county's decision, but it could affect us.
Is it close on that? That was the Proposition
I
1?
don't remember the numbers offhand.
It
That
was
was
Proposition 2, which.
There was
Two.
2. One was to change the
One
term
was to
limits.
change the term limits, that was one.
That was one, and that
2
failed,
was to take from the sewage treatment fund.
and move it to the county
and
general
move it to
budget.
County general budget.
And that passed, but there's still county.
Apparently, I wasn't sure
Yeah.
where it was, how
think it's
close it
close,
was,
right?
whether absentees would affect that or not, so.
Absentee ballots out there.
There's a lot of absentees.
Yes, a lot.
A lot of absentees.
So, but I don't know how that will affect us. It'll,
I don't think it will. Again, I was listening to the county executive this morning, and I think that he factored in that money in his budget. So if it didn't, it'd be worse.
Oh, okay.
So it's not like it's a
There was no
windfall.
indication where that money, it was just to go to a general fund, there was no indication of how that.
It's tax stabilization money is the way they said it. It's not,
I have the numbers here if you're interested.
sure.
Early votes and on election night, 27,400 votes yes, 270,000 yes, 232,000 no.
So it's close.
So it's,
No, it's a 40,000 vote difference, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
we
it's
still have a lot of
significant. But
outstanding
anyway,
absentees.
but that's the county's fiscal,
That's a hard.
It's a hard
Issues,
road,
yeah.
but I'm not gonna
Yeah.
get into that.
So, yeah, I mean, I know a little bit about that fund, having served at the county, I'm sure Len does too. So in your sales tax, when you pay your sales tax, there's a component of it that goes to stabilize rates in sewer districts, county sewer districts, which we don't actually have on the east end. But there's a lot of them in Suffolk County. And they have this surplus fund available to keep rates from going up by more than 3%. If rates are proposed to go up by more than 3%, they can kick money in from this. But it has grown. There's a significant amount of money sitting there, and the county executive is trying to take some of that excess money and move it back to stabilize taxes in general. But some of that it's water quality related funds, so people have concerns about it.
And
It
there's
could
no
be used
provision
for
to
water
return
quality
that.
projects as
There's no
well.
provision in the law to, funds that are taken out, to put it back. And I
Right.
think that's one of the basis of the arguments that people who voted against it.
Yeah,
And where the funds actually come from, it's the 1/4% sales
1/4%.
tax that
Yeah, I
we
mean, it
passed
reminds
in
me
the
a little of
90s.
Proposition 5.
yes, and it can be used for water quality types of projects, so it would not be available then for that.
Right.
So the environmental community on the whole was opposed to moving this money. The county executive supported it for fiscal reasons because the county is in dire fiscal need of additional money. So the public has weighed in. We're not sure where they ended up, but right now it sounds
Yeah, it
like.
looks like the public wants to have their money spent to lower their taxes and
Right.
pay for the funding, rather than it sitting in some other account that they can't use.
Right, but we'll see how it ends up. All right. So, but again, on the budget, I wanted to thank you and your staff in particular
you.
for all the work that you did. I think it's an excellent budget.
Yeah, it stays within the tax cap, which is important. That's, important. I don't know if you followed some of the other towns, but
lot of them
many of the
pierced it.
towns had to pierce the cap. A lot of western towns pierced the cap, and with increases of 6, 7, 8% on their tax levies. So, we were in a position, because of our strong reserves and our previous fiscal policy and our restraint in spending, to allow us to weather this storm and any other storm that came by.
But now you didn't, in terms of reserves, you applied some reserves, but the typical amount, right? You
Yeah,
didn't-
but
You didn't-
again, we're allowed to do that because we have reserves.
Right, well, they had built up beyond,
Sure,
What
we
we
felt
did.
is what's
they were
reasonable.
growing, but we didn't do more than we typically do in terms of allocation of reserves.
No, but,
I think that's an important point, because, I don't like the fact that we have to raise the tax rate. We could have not raised the tax rate by taking even more reserves, putting it in, but then we could run into problems the next year, or the following year, or 5 years down the road, if we don't keep the amount of money being collected in line with the amount of expenses that the town has. If you start pulling from your reserves to close the gap, your reserves start to go down and down and down, and then you really end up with large increases in taxes. And the other complicating factor this year of our own doing is we said we would not reassess properties that didn't change. We froze everything. Now, normally, we adjust to the market, and this market has gone up faster than any market I've seen. It was a historic rise in property values, which would have meant that we would have captured that increase, and the tax rate we would have lowered so that when it got multiplied together, it ended up in the same place. And then we would not have had to raise the tax rate. So had we not froze assessments, even this year, I believe we would not have raised the tax rate. It would be the same or slightly lower. But we did that because we were concerned that our assessment system was disproportionately affecting some people who could not handle large increases in their taxes because their property values were going up faster than other areas of the town. And I'm not sure where we ended up with that, but we are asking the state.
We were
give
going to look
us-
for a home rule message
Right.
to allow for some type of a homestead
Yeah, we
exemption.
need a resolution to adopt the findings of the advisory committee
Yeah, I think,
and direct me to request from our Senate and state delegation a mechanism that would allow us to put the homestead exemption in place, and I think it was a cap.
I think we need to follow up with that,
Yeah.
Jim.
Yeah, I'll follow up with Lisa.
Yeah, Lisa was going to prepare something, I don't know if we've ever,
Yeah, 'cause this is the last year of the freeze.
yeah,
So,
no. So it'd be good if we had that, and then
People are gonna be shocked
we're budgeting
a year from now, when because the property values have gone up by some areas, 20%.
Well, we included extra money in this budget for consultants to help with basically almost a reassessment next year, because there'll be so many properties that have to be looked at.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we included money in the budget to help with that.
yeah, it would be nice if we could get that mechanism in place
Yeah.
within that year, if,
You're on a tight timeframe. I don't think it's going to happen that quickly, Jay.
right. So no, the problem that we're gonna face, I don't wanna go too far afield as we, adopt the budget, but the problem we'll face is if we extend the freeze, we're gonna start getting this larger and larger gap between true value and what we assess at. And things are gonna start to get really out of whack, where properties that are worth more are paying less in taxes than properties that are worth less.
Yeah.
Properties that are worth more paying lower taxes than properties that are worth less, and vice versa.
Yeah, no, we need to move on that. That's something that we should, Jim and I should we should
Yeah, I'll
follow
follow
on
with Lisa. I mean, as you know, Southampton is unique in that we're one of the few towns in the state that municipalities that do 100% assessment,
Yeah,
If that happens, then the state will have to apply the equalization rate like they do with the
right.
other towns.
Yeah, we'll reach a point where we really can't go back
Yeah.
without what happened years ago when they first did this. And people waited in line for hours in the rain to grieve because of the sudden jump in their taxes.
Right.
We don't want that.
Right. Most municipalities, your assessed value of your property doesn't change unless you do a significant change to your CO, an improvement to your house, where you apply for your building permit, you get a CO, then
Right.
the assessors office will be alerted to that, or sometimes on a sale, they may give an indication.
Yeah.
but-
And honestly, we may have to do that.
And-
If we're not able to get these protective mechanisms from the state, we may.
Right.
And
it'll
those
be a
towns
board
are
decision.
finding intrinsic problems with that system, whereas people
Sure.
who do
I mean-
renovations or they do purchase are paying a much higher tax rate than those who don't, and you have a
Right.
two-tier tax system,
Right.
which is what Nassau
So-
County was
right.
trying to
I was gonna
unravel
say,
for the past.
all you have to do is look towards Nassau County to see the inequity. Like, sometimes you have a house that, say, was built in Old Westbury in 1920, and it has the same assessed value as a house in Levittown, And so obviously, that's crazy, but.
Well, the one thing we learned in this process is that the system we have, although, yes, some properties went up by 10%, and that alarmed some people, there were other properties that were going up by 20%, 30%. The ones that went up proportionally the most tended to be the highest valued properties. So east of the canal, through the years, have been picking up a larger and larger share of the cost of running town government. It hasn't been bad for western Southampton. It hasn't been bad for the lower valued areas like Flanders and Riverside, Hampton Bays, East Quogue. It's actually worked to their benefit.
Drops that tax.
Now those areas are starting to go up, though, in value quite a bit. Flanders, Riverside, East Quogue, you're seeing, larger jumps in the valuation. But the system itself hasn't hurt, in general, people of lesser means. It's actually helped them.
Because it drops their tax rate. As you said, it's a multiplier.
Yeah, so they may go up this much,
Right. But that
But-
tax rate's dropped.
this goes up this much.
Right.
Yeah, and so the slice of the pie east of the canal has gotten much bigger.
Right.
I
And
s-
and
I still think
compresses
that
the
we
other.
need to look at assessing the higher value homes, which 2 years ago, we had a discussion about that with
Yeah.
Lisa, about how they really don't have the tools to do that.
Absolutely, and we've been learning, as you know, from, as we acquire property, we often look at what the assessment is, and they can be out of whack. Sometimes they're, grossly undervalued in our tax rolls. So we need to get a better handle on that as we move forward, I think, and you see a house that we have it assessed for, let's say, $10 million, and then it sells for 20 million, and you wonder what happened. But these properties are unique.
Right.
They're one of a kind, and it's not, assessment has never been an exact science. And one sale alone, you can't really look at one sale alone. You have to look at the whole neighborhood and see if there's a trend going on.
Right.
And that's what our sole assessor tries to do.
She does.
But,
She does a pretty good job all in all. I mean, it's very difficult. Sometimes they really, on some of these properties, they get into assessing the quality of the interior improvements, and that can be very difficult, you know.
Well,
But it
again,
shows up in the assessment. so, you
Sure.
know, you
It
see
still
that
shows up in the sales.
disproportionate amount of revenue that we derive from a smaller amount of high-valued homes.
Sure.
You know, and her estimate was that we were only halfway there.
Yeah, well, they do have factors that look at the type of construction that should affect the value of how that house is assessed.
We also, that was another issue that we had, that when the neighborhood starts to rise, there are some people who are still living there that,
Right.
you know, they shouldn't necessarily be
Yeah, that's,
unduly affected because the
Right.
neighbor on each side of you has built a McMansion
Right.
and you were just trying to.
Agreed.
that's the
live out.
hardship. You're
Yeah.
exactly right.
That's the hardship,
And
exactly.
that's where we found in this group, you know, we have somebody who's been living in the house for 50 years.
Yeah.
You know, and they may have purchased it for 200,000, now it's worth 2 million because
Right.
we enjoy that kind of appreciation.
Right.
Yeah,
But-
there's an inverse benefit there.
Sure, but that person,
Odd
you know,
way,
it's-
but
they're straining, because now, you know, to pay that tax bill on that $2 million house, I
Yeah.
mean, which was, you know, they said they purchased for $50,000 in 1965 or something, but,
Right.
yeah.
And the assessor tends to, like on those neighborhoods, they do a larger assessment every 4 years, a more detailed assessment. So 4 years go by and it's been going up at 10% every year, so suddenly there's a 40% increase, and every home, you know, gets suddenly a 40% increase in their valuation, and which could translate to a 40% increase in their taxes.
Yeah,
It's
depending on, right.
it's a big hit if you've done nothing to your house.
Right, and it's great if you want to move, but if you just
Right.
want to live here and retire here,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not so great.
Some of the high-end areas enjoy a very low tax rate, so as the supervisor mentioned, your bill is a multiplier of your assessment and your rate.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean by the inverse benefit, you know, you
Yeah.
suddenly have equity that you didn't have, but that doesn't necessarily
That
help
doesn't
you.
help you.
Yeah, phenomenally low tax
Just
rates in
wanna
a lot of our.
All right, so you
But with
guys,
the high assessment compared to a low tax rate,
You
you're
have the
still paying
lowest
a
tax rates on Long
significant-
Island by
Exactly.
far.
Right.
all right, who's ready to adopt the budget here?
Well, I have a question for Len before we move on, if it's okay.
Sure.
Len, I was just wondering if there was any talk or if you had heard anything from the New York State Comptroller's Office in regard to the very high LRS contributions that municipalities paid this year. I mean, it's not just us, it's every town and every county in the state based their retirement contribution on the stock market in March.
They
They-
said that the bill is the bill, and please pay on time. Well, you know, whatever the stock market is in March of next year, hopefully it will go up or be better.
I guess I'm asking,
We
if-
should get that adjusted for the following year.
It's possible
if the
that-
retirement fund is flush and it's, you know.
It's
because
not overfunded yet. It's still,
Okay.
Have they
it's
ever,
about 90% funded.
have they ever actually refunded money or no?
No.
No, but they, what they'll
Or you would
freeze,
credit the following year.
Right.
so they would hold it to say, wouldn't ask, they wouldn't increase it. Or they could.
What
they could lower
the
rate.
history has shown over the last 10 years, since there's been improvements in the market, what they did, instead of lowering our rate so much, what they did was lowered the internal rate that they're assuming that the fund is going to make. Years ago, they used to say, in the long run, the fund is going to make 8% a year. And then you would base all your calculations based on that, and that would figure out our bill. That number now is down to 6%. So every time you lower that assumption, we would have to pay more money. So he always just lowered it when the fund made a lot of money so that it didn't really affect our rate that much. So he lowered that, which long-term structurally makes the state retirement system much more sound, which is a good thing for everybody in general. You know, some of these other states are 30, 40% funded, and they're in crisis mode, you know. They really are not in a good situation. State of New York is one of the best funded pensions in the country, you know, so.
So next year, we may, you know, if this year we saw an increase in 600,000, next year we may see a decrease in 600,000, you know.
Yeah, I wouldn't count on that, but I would, I
No,
would
we
count on it maybe
unlikely.
not going up. That's
Smaller
probably
increase
what I
is
would
what I'm
count on.
hoping. Okay.
No, I think it's
Thank you.
reasonable to say that it would likely actually go down.
Yeah, okay.
It's, I think that's fair. They,
When I'm sitting here next year, we'll see where we are,
Yeah.
okay?
when we get to March, we'll see where the stock market is, and we'll have a good sense of whether, what direction the pension contribution is going to be.
Yeah,
Right now, the market is back to where it was pre-COVID.
yes.
Down. So, but, significantly higher than where it was in March.
Yes, agreed.
So, anyone else before we adopt the budget? All right, there was a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved. Thank you, Len.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, board. All right, is there any other business? Okay, I'll make a motion to close the special meeting.
Second?
Seconded by Councilman Martell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.